She did not kneel this time. She walked to him and kissed the top of his head. The man looked away to give them a frame of privacy, the way a good person does. The boy grabbed the car and tapped the sand twice and said, "Pooh," because old games are still sweet. They played until the light went soft. She thought of the day in the white room. She thought of the words never and except and realistic. She saw how fear had dressed itself in authority, and how authority had worn a clean coat, and how none of that had mattered in the end as much as time on the floor, as much as patience, as much as small sounds passed back and forth under the soft arch of attention. She did not hate anyone for their certainty. She did not waste her small human life on that fire. She chose water. She chose sound. She chose to keep walking. She chose to keep building small circles until they made a wheel that could carry them forward. The boy kept growing his sounds into words. He did not speak like other children. His path was not the same road. But he spoke. He made choices with words and signs and pictures. He said no sometimes, and she took that no as a clear sign he knew his own shape. He said yes, and she took that yes as a shared light. People in the neighborhood changed too. Some learned, some softened. Some watched the boy say, "Way," and then "water," and then "mom," and felt something shift in themselves, like a window had been opened in a room they had always kept shut. Some did not change. That was all right. The world is a mix of doors and walls. She had learned to carry her own key. She started to help other parents, not with big speeches, with tea and a chair and stories. She told them about the jar named therapy. She told them about the shoebox named Not Today. She told them about the man in the park who taught her to wait for eyes and to use silence as a bridge. She told them about the first small A and the first small ma and the way you can hold a moment without squeezing it to death. At night, when the boy slept, she sat by the window and looked at the sky. She did not ask for miracles anymore. She had learned that miracles are not always flashes of light. Sometimes they are drips that fill a bucket. Sometimes they are the sound of a small voice shaping air under the patient gaze of love. She cleaned the keyboard and replaced the missing keys with pieces of cardboard, not to fix the sound, but to honor the shape. She played notes that matched the vowels he could make. Ah. O. E. She sang them and let them rise and fall like tide. He would hum from his bed sometimes. He would hum in his sleep. She would listen and feel the day loosen its grip. At his next birthday, she set a cake on the table again. It was simple. A few friends came. The man from the park came and stood in the back so the noise and lights would not crush the boy. She lit the candle. The boy looked at the flame. He looked at her. He said, "Ma, help." 2 words, tiny, exact, perfect. She guided his hand, and together they blew out the candle. The smoke rose and curled and faded. The room filled with the soft sound of people who understood something sacred had happened without needing to name it. Later, after cake, the boy sat with the man and rolled the car. He made the poo sound twice and then stopped and looked at the man and said, "Play. Clear. Gentle." The man nodded and put his hand to his chest and said, "Yes." She watched them. She smiled. She washed a plate in the sink. Water ran cold over her fingers, and she laughed quietly because years ago the sound of water had been the first clue that words could live in the house again. She put the jar named Therapy back on the shelf. She did not empty it. She still saved. Life asks for seeds, even when the tree is already growing. She kept the notebook of words. It was thick now. It told a story made of time. It told how breath became sound, and sound became shape, and shape became meaning, and meaning became a path. 2 people walked together, because love is not a ladder. You climb alone, but a bridge you build, while someone watches and waits and matches your steps. When people asked her how she kept hope, she did not give them rules. She did not give them a map. She told them a small truth. Hope is not a wall poster. It is not a hashtag. It is the next thing, the next session, the next song, the next game on the floor, the next deep breath when the store lights are too bright and the line is too long, and a child's body is telling you it is all too much. Hope is leaving a cart full of groceries and walking out into the sun and saying, "We try again tomorrow." She learned to celebrate small things the way some celebrate big ones. A new sound, a new look, a new sign, a pause that means he is thinking of the word, a reach that means he is asking without asking, a smile that means the world is kind for this single second, and that is enough. When the boy fell asleep that night after the party, she sat beside him and placed her hand near his cheek without touching him. She watched his breath move the air. She whispered, "Thank you," to no one and to everything. She closed her eyes and saw the park, the sand, the car, the stone, the first A like a small bird lifting its head. She saw the man's soft nod. She saw the doctor's chart turning into a paper plane and flying out the window. She laughed at that picture and opened her eyes again. Morning came. She woke before the boy and boiled water for tea. The kettle sang. She loved that sound. She poured and sat and took a pen and wrote a new list. It was not a list of plans this time. It was a list of names for the day. Gentle, patient, clear, simple, soft, steady. She hung the list on the wall with the old tape and smiled because some things you do not replace when they still work. The boy woke and padded into the kitchen, with hair like a little storm. He rubbed his eyes. He looked at her. He said, "Ma." She answered, "Yes," and opened her arms. He walked into them. He pressed his ear to her chest like he did when he was small and quiet and silent and already full of all the words that would one day come. She held him and felt the soft thump of his heart through his shirt. She felt the soft thump of her own. 2 drums, 1 song. They began their day. She played a note on the keyboard and he made the same vowel in the air. She pointed at the picture of water and he said, "Way," then tried again, water. He asked for a banana with a sign and a sound. He watched a bird at the window and said, "Bird," then looked at her to see if the word had landed. She nodded. He smiled. They ate. They laughed. They faced a moment that felt heavy and waited until it grew lighter. They went to the park and drew circles in the sand. Sometimes, when the light was right and the air was gentle, she would hear again the voices from the past saying never. They came like old weather. She would nod at them the way you nod at a cloud that no longer holds rain. She would go back to rolling a ball with her son. She would go back to the small game that had built a bridge across a sea. In the evenings he liked to hold a book, not to read it, but to feel the weight of it in his hands. He liked to flip pages. She would point to pictures and say the words. He would repeat what he could. Sometimes he would put his finger on her lips and wait to feel the shape of a sound under the skin. She would let him. She would make the sound again. He would make it too. Then he would laugh because the human mouth is a funny thing when you think about it. It opens. It closes. It makes air into letters. It makes feelings into bridges between 2 people who were separate before and are less separate now. When she lay down at night, her back sore and her mind humming, she did not count fears anymore. She counted sounds. Ma, pa, wa, oh, bird, play, help, please. She counted them like stars and then let the counting end so she could sleep. She knew more sounds would come. She knew some would go. She knew the path would curve. She was ready to walk whatever shape it took. If someone had asked her to name the miracle, she would have said it was not the first Ma, though that was a jewel. She would have said it was the day she decided to love without a timeline, the day she put down the stopwatch, the day she changed never into not yet, the day she turned the doctor's sentence into a comma and kept writing. The boy dreamed. In his dream, he rolled a car across the sky, and the stars made poo sounds when the wheels passed. He laughed in his sleep and turned toward the window where the moon hung like a bright friend. She woke, heard the small laugh, and smiled in the dark. Morning would come again. Work would come. Play would come. Sound would come and come again. She closed her eyes and let the night hold them both. The next day, at the park, a new mother sat alone on the bench with a tired face and a baby who stared at the light through the leaves. The man, with the soft way of moving, rolled a car in the sand and waited for eyes. The circle turned. The world, for all its hard edges, made room for another small miracle shaped like patience. The boy drew a circle and 2 lines for eyes and 1 for a smile, and pointed at his mother and said, "Ma," and then looked at the new mother and pointed at her and said, "Baby," soft and proud and entirely his own. She put her hand over her heart and breathed in the morning. She did not think about never. She did not think about always. She thought about this moment, and the sound living in it, and the way love had brought them here. Step by small step. Sound by small sound, circle by circle, until all the little inches had become a road. And they walked on, and they spoke, and when words were hard, they reached for hands, and when hands were full, they reached for eyes, and when even eyes were tired, they reached for breath, and breath was enough, and then, when it wasn't, they waited, and then it was again.